"You were married?" He asked. "Once. Now I'm just someone trying to survive." The first time he saw her, she was standing at the corner of the subway platform, shivering in a coat that had clearly seen better days. Rain slicked strands of hair clung to her pale face, and her hands were stuffed deep into threadbare gloves. He remembered the way she looked, not just cold, but exhausted, like the world had taken more than she could give. He had wanted to ignore her, like everyone else did. But something in her eyes stopped him. They weren't just tired, they were quietly, painfully human. "You okay?" he asked, walking closer. She looked up, startled. For a second, he thought she might vanish into the shadows of the station like a ghost. Then she gave a small, bitter laugh. "Once," she said, almost to herself. "I was okay once." "Once what?" He pressed gently, sensing there was more behind those words. "Married," she whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. "Once. Now I'm just someone trying to survive." He hesitated. He didn't know what to say. How could anyone respond to that? But there was a soft courage in her, a determination to keep standing despite everything. He sat down next to her anyway. "What happened?" he asked, not out of curiosity, but because he wanted her to feel heard. Her story spilled out in quiet fragments, nights spent alone in a tiny apartment, endless bills, a marriage that dissolved under the weight of sickness and debt, and a child she hadn't seen in months because life kept moving faster than she could. She didn't ask for sympathy. She didn't even ask for help. She just spoke her truth, as if telling someone else might make it less heavy. He found himself listening, and then, without thinking, he offered her a small piece of bread he had tucked in his coat. She took it, eyes wide, like he had handed her sunlight. "You're kind," she said softly. "I'm just human," he replied, shrugging. "Like you." That night he couldn't stop thinking about her. Something about the way she had carried so much pain with such quiet dignity made him want to do more than offer bread. The next day, he brought her a warm jacket, some food, even a small notebook. At first, she refused. Pride is hard to set down, but slowly, like the first drops of rain soaking into dry soil, she began to accept it. Weeks passed. They met at the same corner, not as strangers, but as companions in a world that often seemed unkind. And then, one evening, sitting on a worn bench beneath flickering streetlights, she said something that made his heart stop. "You know," she said, her voice trembling, "I never thought anyone would care. Not really, and yet, here you are." He shook his head, almost embarrassed. "I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it because you deserve someone to notice, to care, even if it's just a little." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't of sorrow, they were of hope. Months later, she found work at a small bookstore, something steady, something that reminded her life could hold joy again. She reconnected with her child, slowly rebuilding bridges that had burned in anger and circumstance. And every step of the way he was there, not moment, even when the world seems determined to keep you apart. "You know," he said quietly, "I think that's what life's about, finding small moments that remind us we matter, even when everything else tells us we don't." She nodded, staring out at the rain-streaked window. "I used to think kindness was a luxury," she said, her voice soft. "Something people gave when they had extra to spare. But now I see it's what keeps people alive. Sometimes more than food, more than money, it's the simple act of noticing, of caring." He smiled, feeling the warmth of her words settle in his chest. "And sometimes it comes full circle," he said, "because your courage to keep going. It inspires me too." She laughed softly, a sound that seemed to push the shadows back from the corners of her small apartment. "I guess we've both been surviving," she said, "but now, maybe we can start living." In the months that followed, her world shifted in ways she had never imagined. She found laughter again, quiet, tentative, but real. She allowed herself to dream, even in small ways, about what the future could hold. And through it all, he remained a steady presence, a reminder that humanity isn't measured by grand gestures, but by the small, consistent acts of compassion that ripple outward and touch lives in ways we can't always see. One evening as they walked through the park, the city lights reflecting on puddles from a recent rain, he asked, teasingly, "So, you were married once. Does that make you an expert in surviving life's storms?" She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe. Or maybe it just taught me the value of kindness. Because in the end, surviving is one thing, but living takes someone willing to care." And in that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city, she realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was alive, and that realization, that simple, profound truth, was the most beautiful act of kindness life had ever shown her. Uplifting message. Life isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about finding and offering small acts of compassion that remind us of our shared humanity. Survival can feel lonely, but even one person noticing, caring, or showing kindness can transform a life. If you want, I can also adapt this story into a tightly timed 12-minute spoken narration script, with pacing, pauses, and emotional beats highlighted, ready for recording or narration. That would make it sound very cinematic and heartfelt for listeners. Do you want me to do that next?